Is this one of the craziest frauds in white-collar crime history? This 21-year-old kid ran a company valued at over $280 million. He faked over $100 million in revenues, duped Wall Street's sharpest minds, and built an empire on lies. But here's the kicker. His story doesn't end with one scandal. It's a roller coaster of deceit, redemption, and betrayal you won't believe. This is the greatest con man you've never heard of. Buckle up, because once you start this Barry Minkow story, you won't want to look away.
Teenager Barry Minkow seemingly had it all: a Ferrari, a mansion, and a carpet cleaning business valued at nearly $300 million.
One of the most famous stock swindlers of the 1980s.
December 1986. The floor of the New York Stock Exchange buzzes with excitement. A baby-faced young man in an expensive suit stands among veteran traders, watching as his company's stock begins trading. His name is Barry Minkow, and at just 21 years old, he's about to become one of the youngest millionaires in American history. The Wall Street Journal calls him a business genius. Forbes celebrates him as the next Steve Jobs. His company, ZZZZ, is valued at $300 million. He owns a Ferrari, lives in a mansion, and is negotiating to buy a Major League Baseball team. And every single bit of it is built on lies. Barry Minkow, the boy who fooled Wall Street. To understand how a teenager managed to pull off one of the greatest frauds in Wall Street history, we need to go back to where it all began. The San Fernando Valley, 1975. While other kids were watching Saturday morning cartoons, 9-year-old Barry Minkow was learning the art of the deal.
Barry was different. While we were playing baseball, he was reading business magazines. He didn't want to be a firefighter or an astronaut. He wanted to be a millionaire.
Born to a Jewish family in Inglewood, California, Barry's first taste of business came through his mother, who worked at a local carpet cleaning company. She got her 9-year-old son a job as a telemarketer. Yes, you heard that right, a 9-year-old telemarketer. "Hello, ma'am. I'm calling about your carpets."
It was incredible. This kid would get on the phone and you'd swear you were talking to a grown man. He had this natural ability to connect with people, to convince them. We used to joke that he could sell sand in the Sahara.
But Barry wasn't content just being a good salesman. He was studying every aspect of the business: the cleaning techniques, the chemicals, the equipment, the pricing strategies. By age 15, he knew the carpet cleaning industry inside and out. What no one realized was that he was also learning something else: how to manipulate financial systems. 1982, Ronald Reagan was president, E.T. was in theaters, and in a modest garage in Reseda, California, 16-year-old Barry Minkow was about to launch an empire. With just 3 employees, 4 phones, and a borrowed carpet cleaning machine, ZZZZ was born. The name itself was a teenager's joke, designed to be the last listing in the phone book. But Barry's ambitions were anything but last place. There was just one problem. He couldn't even drive to his own jobs.
We had to pick him up and drive him to the cleaning jobs. Here's this kid telling us what to do, negotiating with customers, handling the books. And he didn't even have a driver's license. But man, could he sell?
The early days were brutal. 2 banks closed his business account. California law didn't allow minors to sign binding contracts. Suppliers demanded cash up front. Customers complained. Most teenagers would have given up. Barry Minkow decided to get creative. It started small: a staged break-in here, a fraudulent insurance claim there. Barry sold his grandmother's jewelry and claimed it was stolen. He began kiting checks between multiple banks, writing checks from empty accounts and depositing them in others, playing a dangerous game of financial hot potato.
What makes the early ZZZZ frauds so interesting is their sophistication. This wasn't just a kid stealing from the cash register. These were complex financial crimes that would challenge experienced fraudsters, let alone a teenager.
But Barry's real genius emerged when he met Tom Paget, an insurance claims adjuster. Together, they conceived a scheme so audacious it would eventually fool Wall Street's smartest minds. The plan was brilliant in its simplicity. ZZZZ would expand beyond carpet cleaning into insurance restoration, repairing buildings damaged by floods and fires. These contracts were worth millions, far more than cleaning carpets. There was just one catch: the restoration jobs didn't exist.
They created an elaborate paper trail, work orders, invoices, photographs of supposed restoration sites. They even set up a fake company, Interstate Appraisal Services, to verify the work. It was a Ponzi scheme wrapped in a legitimate business.
What made ZBest unique among fraud schemes was that part of it was absolutely real. The carpet cleaning division wasn't just a front, it was excellent. They won awards for quality service. Real customers praised their work. This legitimate facade made the fraud nearly impossible to detect. By day, ZBest trucks crisscrossed Southern California, cleaning real carpets for real customers. But these legitimate jobs were just a small fraction of the company's reported revenue. The real money was in the phantom restoration projects. By 1986, Barry Minkow was ready for the big leagues. At just 20 years old, he would attempt something unprecedented, taking ZBest public on the NASDAQ. But first, he had to fool the auditors. When accountants demanded to see the restoration projects, Minkow orchestrated an elaborate hoax. He rented entire office buildings and staged them as work sites. Dozens of people were hired to pose as employees. Phones were installed with fake work orders on computer screens.
The attention to detail was incredible. They thought of everything, from the smell of cleaning chemicals to the sound of ringing phones. It was like walking onto a movie set, except we thought it was real.
By early 1987, ZBest stock was trading at $18 a share on NASDAQ, valuing the company at a staggering $280 million. Barry Minkow's personal stake was worth $100 million. The garage startup now employed over 1,000 people across 3 states.
Everyone wanted a piece of ZBest. Here was this young, charismatic CEO who had built something from nothing. It was the perfect American success story. We should have known it was too perfect.
Minkow's lifestyle reflected his newfound wealth. He moved into a $700,000 mansion in Woodland Hills. His car collection included a Ferrari and a BMW. But it wasn't enough. Barry had even bigger dreams. In early 1987, Minkow announced his boldest move yet. ZBest would acquire KeyServe, the authorized carpet cleaner for Sears. It was a stunning proposal. KeyServe was twice ZBest's size. The $25 million deal would make ZBest the largest carpet cleaning company in America. Wall Street powerhouse Drexel Burnham Lambert offered to finance the deal with junk bonds. But Minkow wasn't done dreaming.
He was in preliminary talks to buy the Seattle Mariners baseball team. He planned to raise nearly $1 billion to take over ServiceMaster in a hostile bid. Remember, this is a 21-year-old kid who started in his parents' garage.
But beneath the surface, ZBest was drowning. The phantom restoration business required constant cash to pay investors. Each fake project needed more money to cover the previous one. It was a classic Ponzi scheme, and it was about to collapse. The numbers were staggering. 86% of ZBest reported revenue came from the non-existent restoration division. Of the company's claimed $43 million in restoration contracts, not a single one was real.
The level of deception was unprecedented. They created thousands of fake documents, staged elaborate presentations, and maintained multiple sets of books. The real question wasn't how they got caught. It was how they fooled everyone for so long.
In 1987, the Los Angeles Times published a story that would begin the unraveling of ZBest. But it wasn't about the phantom restoration projects or the inflated stock. It was about $72,000 in fraudulent credit card charges from years earlier. A homemaker who had been overcharged a few $100s on her credit card refused to let it go. She tracked down other victims and kept detailed records. Her persistence would crack the first hole in Minkow's carefully constructed facade.
I just knew something wasn't right. When I started digging, I found others with similar stories. Nobody would listen at first. He was this big success story, but I knew the truth had to come out.
The credit card fraud story sent Z-Best's stock plunging, but worse was coming. A reporter discovered that Z-Best didn't have the contractor's license required for large-scale restoration work. The KeyServe merger began to unravel. In a desperate attempt to save his company, Minkow issued a press release claiming record profits. But he made a fatal mistake. He didn't clear it with his auditors, Ernst & Winnie. On June 27, 1987, an independent law firm demanded addresses for all of Z-Best restoration projects. For Barry Minkow, it was the moment of truth. There were no addresses because there were no projects. Within days, he resigned as CEO, citing health reasons.
At 22, he'd been convicted of 57 counts of fraud and was off to federal prison.
The stock that had traded at $18 just months earlier plummeted to $3.50. Over $100 million in market value vanished almost overnight. But the worst revelations were yet to come. On July 8, 1987, the Los Angeles Police Department raided Z-Best headquarters and Minkow's mansion. What they found shocked even seasoned investigators.
We discovered evidence that Z-Best wasn't just committing fraud, it was being used to launder money for organized crime. The teenage CEO had gotten involved with some very dangerous people.
Investigators found multiple sets of books, shredded documents, and evidence of widespread money laundering. The legitimate carpet cleaning business that had provided cover for the scheme was drowning in debt. As investigators dug deeper, the true scope of the fraud emerged. Z-Best reported $50 million in annual revenue. Over 90% was completely fabricated. The insurance restoration business that had impressed Wall Street had never cleaned a single flood-damaged building or restored any fire damage.
This wasn't just some kid cooking the books. This was a sophisticated criminal enterprise. Minkow had created an elaborate network of fake companies, forged documents, and staged presentations that fooled some of the smartest people on Wall Street.
In January 1988, a federal grand jury indicted Barry Minkow and 11 others on 54 counts of racketeering, securities fraud, money laundering, embezzlement, mail fraud, tax evasion, and bank fraud. The trial revealed the incredible complexity of the scheme. Minkow had orchestrated thousands of forged documents, elaborate staged inspections, a network of fake companies, multiple bank fraud schemes, systematic investor deception, complex money laundering operations. Initially, Minkow claimed organized crime figures had forced him into the fraud. But like everything else in his empire, this too was a lie.
The evidence was overwhelming. We had documents, witnesses, confessions from co-conspirators. This wasn't just fraud. It was fraud on a scale that had never been seen before from someone so young.
On December 14, 1988, Barry Minkow was found guilty on all 57 counts. At sentencing, Judge Dikran Tavrizian had harsh words for the former wunderkind.
You're a person with no moral compass. You've manipulated the system, betrayed investors, and shown no genuine remorse.
The sentence was severe. 25 years in federal prison, 5 years probation, and $26 million in restitution. The boy wonder of Wall Street was going to prison. Behind the walls of Federal Correctional Institution, Inglewood, Barry Minkow appeared to transform himself. He became a born-again Christian, completed religious studies through Liberty University, and began writing about his crimes. In prison, Minkow wrote Clean Sweep, a confessional book about the Z-Best scandal. All proceeds would go to his victims. It seemed like the beginning of a remarkable redemption story. After serving 7.5 years, Barry Minkow emerged from prison in 1995. America loves a redemption story, and Minkow was about to give them one, or so it seemed. He became a pastor at the church at Rocky Peak in Chatsworth, California. The former fraudster was now preaching about ethics and redemption. But Barry Minkow had bigger plans. In 1997, Minkow launched the Fraud Discovery Institute. The premise was brilliant. Who better to catch fraudsters than a reformed one? Soon he was working with the FBI, appearing on 60 Minutes and being quoted in the Wall Street Journal. The Fraud Discovery Institute claimed to have uncovered over $1 billion in scams. Major news outlets praised Minkow's transformation. Federal authorities sought his expertise. The con man had become the cop.
Everyone loved the story. Here was this reformed fraudster using his powers for good. It was like catching Al Capone and turning him into an FBI agent.
But beneath this redemption narrative lurked something darker. Minkow had discovered a new way to profit from fraud by exposing it, or at least claiming to. The scheme was sophisticated. Minkow would research companies for potential fraud, take short positions in their stock release damaging reports, profit when the stock price fell, sometimes accept payment to retract his claims. In 2008, Minkow targeted Herbalife, releasing damaging allegations about the company. The stock plunged, but then something strange happened. Herbalife paid Minkow $300,000, and suddenly he retracted all his accusations.
He was essentially running a sophisticated extortion scheme. Find dirt on a company, short their stock, then either profit from the fall or get paid to go away.
In 2009, Minkow made his fatal mistake. He targeted Lennar Corporation, one of America's largest home builders. This time, he went too far. He called Lennar a financial crime in progress and a corporate bully. The company's stock lost $583 million in value after his report, but Minkow had left a trail. Investigators discovered Minkow had bought options, betting Lennar's stock would fall before releasing his report. Even worse, he'd used confidential information about a federal investigation, one he'd helped initiate, to profit from the stock's collapse.
The irony was stunning. The fraud fighter was committing securities fraud. He'd taken everything he'd learned about catching fraudsters and used it to become a more sophisticated one.
But the Lennar investigation uncovered something even more shocking. While posing as a reformed pastor and fraud fighter, Minkow had been systematically looting his own church. Over 10 years, he embezzled more than $3 million from Community Bible Church. He forged signatures, opened unauthorized accounts, and even stole from charity funds meant to build a hospital in Sudan. March 2011, Barry Minkow stood before Judge Patricia A. Seitz in a Miami courtroom. The fraud fighter was about to become a 3-time felon. His letter to his congregation revealed the depth of his fall. "I am no longer qualified to be a pastor. I am not above reproach." But even this confession wasn't fully honest.
What made this case particularly egregious was that he used his position as a pastor and fraud investigator to commit fraud. He weaponized trust itself.
In May 2011, court-ordered psychological evaluations revealed a disturbing portrait. Minkow was diagnosed with multiple conditions: antisocial personality disorder, narcissistic personality disorder, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, anxiety disorder, opioid dependence, anabolic steroid abuse.
What we saw was someone addicted not just to money, but to deception itself. Each scheme became more sophisticated because he was learning, adapting, evolving as a fraudster.
The investigation into Community Bible Church revealed the stunning scope of Minkow's betrayal. He had stolen $3 million from church funds, forged signatures on over 300 checks, created multiple unauthorized bank accounts, used church credit cards for personal expenses, hidden $890,000 in income from the IRS.
The congregation was devastated. These weren't just financial crimes, they were spiritual betrayals. He preached about redemption while stealing from the collection plate.
Among his victims was a widower who gave $75,000 to fund a hospital in Sudan in honor of his late wife. The hospital never existed. Another victim was a grandmother who gave $300,000 meant for her granddaughter's future.
He looked me in the eye, prayed with me, promised to honor my wife's memory, all while knowing it was a lie.
In April 2014, Judge Michael Anello had heard enough. He sentenced Minkow to 5 years in prison, the maximum possible under his plea agreement.
This is a despicable, inexcusable crime. You have shown yourself to be a predator, preying on the trust and faith of your own congregation.
Time it was over, Minkow's restitution orders totaled more than $612 million. The teenage millionaire who once dreamed of owning the Seattle Mariners would spend the rest of his life paying back his victims. Even Minkow's story became part of his final fraud. He had convinced his congregation to help fund a movie about his life and redemption, a redemption that proved as fake as his restoration contracts. The film, starring Mark Hamill and Justin Baldoni, had to be rewritten when its subject was arrested during production.
Making appropriate changes.
There's two ways to shoot it. Either we rewrite Barry out completely and show all the different levels he was doing.
It was finally released in 2018 as Con Man, a fitting title for its subject. In 2022, Discovery Plus released King of the Con, featuring Minkow himself reflecting on his crimes. Even here, viewers wondered, was this genuine reflection or just another performance? I've done more evil than you could imagine. The question isn't whether I could change, it's whether I ever wanted to.
Man, I am a crook. I'm a liar and a thief. None of this is real. No, I'm gonna make it real.
Barry Minkow's frauds didn't just destroy bank accounts. They changed how Wall Street operates. The Z-Best scandal forced fundamental changes in how auditors verify company claims. Today, every major accounting firm studies the ZZZZ Best case. It's required reading at business schools worldwide.
What makes Minkow fascinating is how he exploited the gaps in our financial system. Each time he was caught, he learned and adapted. His frauds evolved from crude credit card scams to sophisticated market manipulation.
The Securities and Exchange Commission implemented new verification requirements after Z-Best. But perhaps more importantly, they learned that age and charisma don't equal integrity. The reforms included mandatory site visits for major contracts, enhanced verification of revenue sources, stricter oversight of young companies, new rules for short seller disclosures. Minkow's abuse of his position as a pastor sent shockwaves through religious communities nationwide. Churches began implementing stricter financial controls.
The Minkow case changed how churches handle money. Many now require multiple signatories on accounts, regular audits, and professional financial oversight. Trust in God, but verify the books.
Behavioral scientists now study Minkow's case to understand the psychology of serial fraudsters.
What's remarkable about Minkow is his ability to compartmentalize. He could preach about ethics on Sunday and commit fraud on Monday. Each reinvention wasn't just a new career, it was a new weapon in his arsenal of deception.
While Minkow's story continues to fascinate, his victims still struggle with the aftermath.
People forget that behind these fascinating fraud cases are real people who lost everything. I lost my retirement savings in Z-Best. Others lost their faith in the community Bible church. You don't recover from that kind of betrayal.
Today, echoes of Minkow's schemes can be seen in cryptocurrency scams, social media fraud, and investment schemes. The tools may change, but the basic elements remain the same. A charismatic leader claims too good to be true, pressure to invest quickly, complex explanations for simple questions, the promise of extraordinary returns. Ironically, Minkow's work as a fraud investigator also changed how financial crimes are investigated.
He showed both the value and the danger of using former fraudsters as investigators. His techniques for spotting fraud were brilliant because he'd invented many of them himself.
In today's era of social media influencers and cryptocurrency schemes, Minkow's story is more relevant than ever. The same psychological triggers Minkow exploited, fear of missing out, trust in authority, the allure of easy money, are now being used by a new generation of fraudsters. While Minkow used paper documents and stage offices, today's fraudsters operate in the digital realm, but the principles remain eerily similar. In 1987, Minkow created fake restoration projects. Today, scammers create fake cryptocurrency projects. The tools have changed, but the psychology hasn't. At the FBI Academy in Quantico, new agents study the Minkow case, not just for its complexity, but for what it reveals about serial fraudsters.
What makes Minkow unique is how he adapted after each conviction. Most fraudsters have one scheme. Minkow had 3 distinct frauds, each more sophisticated than the last.
Even Minkow's movie became part of his fraud pattern. He convinced his church congregation to invest in a film about his redemption, while actively stealing from them. The film starred Mark Hamill as his father and Justin Baldoni as young Barry. Minkow insisted on playing himself in later scenes, creating the surreal spectacle of a fraudster portraying his own fake redemption. The 2022 Discovery Plus series, King of the Con, showed how Minkow's story resonates in the streaming era, but it raised new questions. Was his participation another con?
Minkow. Every time I claimed to be reformed, I was lying. But am I lying now? That's the question, isn't it?
He understood human nature, our desire to believe in redemption, our greed, our trust in authority figures.
Each fraud targeted a different aspect of trust. Financial trust, religious faith, and finally, trust in redemption itself.
What makes him dangerous isn't just his ability to deceive, but his ability to learn from each scheme.
Today, financial institutions implement what's known as the Minkow Protocol, specific checks designed to prevent the types of fraud he pioneered. These include multi-level verification of major contracts, enhanced due diligence on young CEOs, strict separation of church and business finances, regular audits of restoration projects, enhanced scrutiny of short seller claims. Unlike in 1987, today's fraudsters leave digital fingerprints, but they also have new tools at their disposal. Artificial intelligence now scans for patterns similar to Minkow's schemes, but AI can also be used to create more convincing frauds. The Minkow case influenced fraud prevention worldwide. From Tokyo to London, financial regulators study his methods. His techniques exposed vulnerabilities in corporate oversight, religious organization finances, investment verification, short selling regulations, auditing procedures. Perhaps the most important lesson from Barry Minkow's story is that fraud, at its core, isn't just about money, it's about trust. He betrayed Wall Street's trust in the 1980s. He betrayed law enforcement's trust in the 2000s. He betrayed his congregation's trust in the 2010s. The most disturbing aspect of Minkow's case isn't just the money stolen, it's what it reveals about human nature.
Most con men specialize. They find one thing that works and stick to it. Minkow was different. He didn't just adapt his schemes, he adapted his entire personality to exploit different types of trust.
Minkow's 3 major frauds targeted 3 fundamental types of trust that hold society together. Phase 1, financial trust. The ZBest fraud exploited trust in American business, targeted belief in the young entrepreneur, manipulated Wall Street's verification systems. Phase 2, professional trust. The Fraud Discovery Institute exploited trust in redemption, used his past crimes as credentials, manipulated media and law enforcement. Phase 3, spiritual trust. The church fraud exploited religious faith, used his position as pastor to steal manipulated people's belief in redemption.
I lost my life savings because I believed in the American dream.
We trusted him because he seemed to understand fraud from the inside.
He prayed with my dying wife while stealing the money meant for her memorial.
Today's young entrepreneurs face extra scrutiny because of Minkow. His shadow looms over every wonderkindish startup founder. Silicon Valley investors now have a saying: is this the next Mark Zuckerberg or the next Barry Minkow? In the age of cryptocurrency and NFTs, Minkow's methods seem almost quaint, but the underlying principles remain relevant.
As a cybersecurity expert, I can tell you that today's fraudsters use blockchain instead of bank accounts, social media instead of newspaper ads, but they're running the same basic playbook Minkow wrote.
Churches nationwide implemented what became known as the Minkow rules, strict financial controls designed to prevent pastoral fraud.
We church administrators now require multiple signatures on every check, professional audits, and complete separation of pastoral and financial duties.
The Minkow case is now required reading in business schools, law schools, seminary programs, psychology departments, criminal justice programs.
What makes this case unique is how it intersects with multiple disciplines. It's not just about finance. It's about psychology, religion, media, and trust.
As technology evolves, new Barry Minkows emerge, but they leave different traces.
Modern fraudsters can't stage fake offices anymore, but they can create entire virtual worlds of deception.
Beyond the $612 million in restitution orders, Minkow's frauds extracted a deeper cost. They damaged people's ability to trust.
When someone betrays financial trust, victims lose money. When someone betrays spiritual trust, victims lose faith. Minkow did both.
Perhaps the most troubling question raised by Barry Minkow's case is this: can someone who has mastered deception ever truly reform?
Minkow. Every time I claimed to be reformed, I was lying. The real question isn't whether I could change, it's whether I ever wanted to.
As a new generation of investors chases quick riches through cryptocurrency, NFTs, and social media schemes, the Minkow story serves as a stark warning. The tactics evolve, but the red flags remain the same. Promises of extraordinary returns, pressure to invest quickly, complex explanations for simple questions, charismatic leaders with unverifiable claims. Minkow's case fundamentally changed how financial crimes are investigated.
Before Minkow, we focused on the numbers. After him, we learned to look deeper at psychology, at relationships, at patterns of behavior. A perfect spreadsheet can hide a perfect fraud.
If Barry Minkow operated today, he wouldn't need to stage fake offices. Social media would do the work for him.
Today's fraudsters can create entire fake lifestyles with a smartphone. They don't need elaborate props, just good lighting and clever captions.
In what experts call the trust economy, Minkow's case has special relevance.
We live in an era where trust is currency. Uber, Airbnb, crowdfunding all rely on trust between strangers. Minkow showed how vulnerable trust-based systems can be.
Even in prison, Minkow's influence continued. His case changed how the system deals with white-collar criminals.
We had to create new programs specifically for financial fraudsters. Traditional rehabilitation doesn't address the unique psychology of someone who betrays trust for a living.
Often overlooked are the families destroyed by Minkow's frauds, including his own. His father, who once proudly supported his teenage entrepreneur son, lived to see that pride turn to shame. His children grew up with a father known as America's most persistent fraudster. The numbers tell their own story. $100 million lost in ZBest, $583 million in Leonard damages, $3 million stolen from his church, $612 million total restitution, 25 years in prison across 3 sentences, thousands of victims across 3 decades. The Minkow case raises profound questions about reform and redemption.
Can someone addicted to deception ever truly reform? Or does each reformation just become part of a larger con?
The tragedy is that Minkow's genuine talents, creativity, persuasion, financial insight could have made him legitimately successful.
Today's fraud investigators use what they call Minkow markers, red flags based on his schemes, use of religious or moral authority, complex business structures, appeal to trust and redemption, pattern of explaining away criticism. Perhaps Barry Minkow's greatest fraud was convincing people, again and again, that he had changed. Each new version of Barry Minkow was more sophisticated, more convincing, and ultimately more damaging than the last. The teenage millionaire, the jailhouse convert, the fraud-fighting pastor, the 3-time felon. In the end, Barry Minkow's story isn't just about fraud, it's about trust, redemption, and the human capacity for both deception and self-deception. As new frauds emerge in our digital age, his case reminds us that the most dangerous con isn't the one that takes our money, it's the one that takes our trust. The methods change, the technology evolves, but the fundamental question remains. In a world built on trust, how do we protect ourselves from those who make deception their life's work? Like and subscribe for more deep dives into history's greatest financial frauds. And if you enjoyed this video, you don't want to miss this next one.